Hey crew, welcome back. Clayton here. Spooky season is almost upon us, so let's get in the mood and make a jump scare for our horror game in Unreal. Let's get started. For today's project, I've got Unreal 5.4 open. I'm going to use the first person template. I'm going to have this set up on blueprints for desktop, and I'm adding the starter content so we can use the door and some of the lights in there. I'm going to name this project Jump Scare and hit create. For this project, there's a couple things we want to set up right away. I'm going to open my content drawer, create myself a folder called Blueprints. Inside of that folder, I'm going to create another folder called Interfaces. Inside of that, I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Blueprint, down to Blueprint Interface. I'm going to call this BPI Jump Scare. I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and then I will dock it to my main window. So inside of here, we're just going to need the one event. I'm going to call it Jump Scare. Then I will compile and save, and then we can close that as we're done with it. So back in my content drawer, my blueprints folder, I'm going to right click, create a new blueprint class of actor. I'm going to call this BP door. Go ahead and open that up. So under BP door, I'm going to add a static mesh. We're going to call this door frame. Over on the right side, I'm going to search for door frame right here and get the SM door frame from the starter content. Scroll out a little bit, slow my camera down. So I'm going to click on door frame on the left. I'm going to add another static mesh. This one I'm going to call door. On the right side, once again, I'm going to hit the drop down and search door. And choose the SM door. I'm going to move my camera and try to get this lined up the best I can. So as you're moving your door around, you will find that you may need to turn off snapping. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to test the rotation of the door. Looks like I can get a little closer on this side. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to make sure that door swing looks pretty good. So I'm going to set that back to 0. Anytime you want to reset anything in Unreal back to its default values, you can look for this little curved arrow on the right side of most properties. All right, I'm going to compile and save that. I'm going to click on door, and I'm going to add a box collision. Now we'll just name it box collision. I'm just going to move this up and just make this roughly the same shape as our door, so we can't walk through it. I'm using the W and R keys on my keyboard to move in between the move and size tools. Go to the side here, it doesn't need to be that wide. Just move that in. A little bit taller. All right, I would say that's close enough for our door, so I'm going to compile and save. So I'm going to come over to the event graph. I'm going to click class settings. I'm going to go on the right hand side under implement interfaces. I'm going to search for our BPI jump scare. Add that. I'm going to delete these 3 nodes as we don't need them. On the left hand side, You should see a section called interfaces that's been added, and you should see your jump scare under that. If you don't, just compile and save the blueprint and it should show up for you. So we're going to double click this. For this project, there's a couple items we're going to need to download. We can get those for free from freesound.org. I will link everything I use in this video in the description so you can go download it for yourself. So the first one I found was this door handle opening creak. You can make a free account and download this. Once downloaded, I made a sounds folder and I went and imported that. So there's a couple different things we want to do for this jump scare. So let's make a couple custom events and try to keep our blueprint nice and clean. So on this one, I'm going to add a custom event. I'm going to call this open door. I'm going to start with that. I think the first thing we need to do is play our door creak sound that we just downloaded. So I'm going to choose play sound 2D. Now I'm going to find the door creak sound. I'm going to add that. From there, I'm going to add a timeline. I'm going to call this door open. I'm going to double click the timeline and open that up. Inside of here, I'm going to add a float track. I'm just going to call it door. I'm going to right click on the graph, add a key, and up here, I will specify at time 0, I want the value to be 0. And I'm going to right click somewhere else on the graph, add another key, and I'm going to say, let's make it half a second. And I want a value of 1. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to highlight both points on the graph, and I'm going to hit these 2 buttons so everything fits. I'm going to right click one of the nodes. I'm going to choose auto. This is going to smooth out this curve and give the door a much more natural sort of movement instead of going from one position to the other. So I'm going to compile and save that. I'm going to go back to the event graph. From here, I'm going to grab our door, not the door frame. I'm going to drag that out, and I'm going to set relative rotation. I'm going to connect the update pin from our timeline. And from our timeline, I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to look for a node called lerp, because I want to slowly rotate that door and not just jump it from one position to the other. I'm going to move door down to the alpha. I'm going to hold Alt and disconnect it from A. So for our door to open, the starting position will be 0. So let's go back to the viewport and let's rotate the door. Let's see. I'm going to turn snapping back on for this. Maybe 30 degrees might work. Just going to undo that. I'm going to come back to our event graph. So our starting position will be A. Our ending position will be the 30 degrees of our rotation. And this node will take the 0 to 1 values as it loops through the timeline and interpolate the movement of the door. So I'm going to right click, split this pin, and I'm going to take our return value, I'm going to add it to the Z, since that is the axis the door will open on. Now I want to add a variable, so I'm going to come down the left side, hit the plus. I'm going to call this can do jump scare. I'm going to compile and save, and then I'm going to set that to true because obviously we want this to be true right away. I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to hold down Control so I can get the value of this. Pull this up. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, add a branch. So if we can do a jump scare, we don't want everything to happen instantly. So let's add a delay of say 2 seconds maybe. And you can adjust these times and fine tune yours for your particular experience. And then from here, after the 2 second delay, let's open the door. Compile and save. From here, let's go back to our content drawer. blueprints. Now we need a way to trigger this action. So I'm going to right click, create a new blueprint of actor. I'm going to name this BP jump trigger and open that up. All we need to add on this is a box collision. I'm going to name this box collision. And a quality of life tip for you: when you add one of these lines can be very hard to select in your game view. So if you come to the right side under line thickness, usually turn that to about 2. If you want, you can make it 1. Now with box collision selected, I'm going to scroll down on the right side. I'm going to choose on component begin overlap. We can get rid of these other nodes as we don't need them. So in this here, I want to grab the other actor, and I'm going to look for an equals node. And from there, I'm going to get player pawn. I'm going to add this. So if the other actor is the player, we only want our player to trigger the jump scares. We don't want our enemy AI to go through this collider and trigger jump scare for us. Add a branch. So if this is true, I want to come out and look for a for each loop. The reason I'm going to add a for each loop is maybe I want to trigger multiple items or multiple actions during the jump scare when this is triggered. So on the for each loop, there's an array of items that you can loop over. So let's go over to variables and create that. So I'm going to call this items to activate. I'm going to make this of a type actor, because it's going to be other actors in our scene that we're wanting to activate. So I'm going to make this an object reference. Then I'm going to come up here on the right side. I'm going to hit this drop down and make this an array. This will make setup very easy. Oh, I hit compile without hooking it up. My bad. So I'm going to drag that out and drop it right on the array right here. And then from the loop body, I'm going to pull this out, and I just want to say jump scare. So if the actors in our loop implement our blueprint interface, it will call jump scare on them. If they do not, no error message will be thrown. They will just be ignored. So I'm going to compile and save this. Let's go back to our map. Let's go right here. I'm going to drag out the jump trigger. I'm going to move this up, and I'm going to make this big enough that the player cannot miss it when he comes through this section. That will do. I'm going to come out right here, and I'm going to grab our BP door. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees this way. So I'm going to file, save all. Now that we have the door placed, let's go back over to the trigger. And if you see these thicker lines right here, you can select this. This is why I increased that line size. To be able to add other actors to our trigger from the editor, we need to come back over to BP jump trigger. Our items to activate, you need to hit this little eyeball icon right here, where you can select on it and choose instance editable. I'm going to compile and save and go back to our map. And now you'll see right here under the details panel, there's an items to activate. I'm going to add an item to the array. I'm going to hit this eyedropper, and I'm going to go over here to our BP door. I'm going to click that. So now let's test. I'm going to hit play. Go through our trigger. After a 2-second delay, our door opened and we heard the sound. Okay, excellent. But that by itself is not very scary. So let's add a few more elements. For the next element, I went out on this site here and I found this image. Wonderful thanks to this author right here, yganko. I went ahead and downloaded this. And let's get this added to Unreal. From your downloads folder, just go to content and drag that photo in right here. So now in our blueprints folder, I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to user interface. And I want to create a widget blueprint. This is going to be of type user widget. I'm going to call mine BP underscore UI underscore jump scare. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Since we do not have any other user interface in our game so far, we're just going to add everything we need here. First thing I'm going to do is search for a canvas. I'm going to drag the canvas panel out. Then from there, I'm going to add an image. I will drag that out. On the right-hand side, I'm going to click on anchors. And I want to click center on that. Underneath the brush, I want to go find our image and add that in here. And then all we need to do is just make this slightly bigger than the canvas panel so it takes up the entire screen. If you use this image, this fits very well. If you used a different image, you will just need to play with it a little bit, or maybe pull it into Photoshop and alter it so it fits your screen. And really, for this is all we need to do. I'm going to compile and save. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to go back over to BP door. And once again, since we don't have any other UI components in our game, I'm just going to go ahead and make a reference to our UI component here. So I want to add the event begin play. From here, I want to create widget. Pull this up, a little bigger. I'm going to search for the UI widget we just created. And then I'm going to drag this out and I'm going to promote this to a variable. And on the left side, I'm going to name this UI ref so we can reference this later and add it and remove it from our viewport. Now that we have our UI widget created with our scary picture, let's add it to the screen. To keep our logic separated, I'm going to add another custom event. This one I'm going to name screen jump scare. So from here, we want to grab the variable that we just created for our reference to our UI. And we want to add to viewport. I'm going to hook up that execution node. And no jump scare is complete without scary sounds to go with it. So on freesound.org, I found this wonderful sound of girls screaming. Once again, I will link all this down in the description for you guys. So go ahead and download that and add it to your sounds folder. So we can come back to BP door and play sound 2D. And from here, we want to find the sound we just added. Try to move these down just a little bit, make some room. So now that our scary picture is on the screen and we're playing a sound, let's delay for, let's say 1.5 seconds. Just enough for the user to see and hear everything. And if you used a different sound than I did, you will want to compare this time to the length of time of the sound that you're using. All right, so after our delay, let's remove that from the screen. So let's get our UI reference again. And we're going to say remove from parent. And this will take the picture off the screen for us. So I'm going to compile and save. So let's come back up to our main event jump scare. I'm going to move these down a little bit. So after our door opens, let's do another delay. Maybe another 1.5 seconds. Then let's do the screen jump scare. So compile and save and come back and let's test this out. So we come over here and go through our trigger. After 2 seconds, door opens. We get our picture and it goes away. Okay, and we heard the sound. Now, there is a bit of a problem with what we have. So if I go through this trigger again, after 2 seconds, it triggers over and over and over. And we don't necessarily want that logic in our game. So let's go ahead and stop this. Let's go back to BP door. And if you remember, we created this can do jump scare. So right after we start this and we can do a jump scare, let's move this stuff down. And let's grab can do jump scare. I'm going to hold down Alt while I bring this out so we can set this variable. And since we don't want to trigger a second one again right away, let's leave that false. And we're not going to have anything on the false execution here. So the rest of this will just be ignored. All right, so we've set it so we can't duplicate the scare. Everything else runs. So let's go ahead and test that right quick. We go through once, door, we get scared. And as you can see, it's not running it over and over again. So good, we fixed that. So now let's stop play. I think there's a couple things we can do to make this a little spookier. So let's open the content drawer. Let's go down to starter content. Under blueprints, you will find a couple different types of lights. So I'm going to grab the wall scones. I'm going to drag a couple of these out and position them. Bring it here where I can see it. Just put that on the wall. I'm going to hit Control D. I'm going to duplicate that. So if you're moving items, if you have to move them quite a ways, if you click on your arrow and then hold Shift, your camera will move with your item across the world. So we can rotate that back the other way. Mount that on the wall. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this floor. Arrow's in the corner. I'm going to hit Control D. I'm going to back my camera up and I'm going to move this floor up to here, maybe. That way our room can be dark. I'm going to leave a little gap so we can get some light in here. And we can see that our wall scones are working now. But I think we need a little bit more light. So I'm going to come back to the content drawer. I'm going to get the blueprint ceiling light. I'm going to pull that out. Put one about here. Come over by our door. Another one here. Take a look. Let's test this right quick and see if this looks much creepier. Okay. Go through. Okay. So let's maybe move our ceiling down a little bit and close out a little bit more light. I am using the new lumen system, which I will not cover in this video. Okay, I think this is a much better environment to continue testing our code. Okay, so I think what would be better to add to the effect is to make this light flicker. So what I'm going to do, since this did come from the starter content, I'm going to highlight this in my scene. I'm going to come up to the center menu option right here. I'm going to say convert selection to blueprint class. This is going to make the parent selection for you. I'm going to rename this BP Flicker Light. This will allow us to inherit everything from the blueprint that was provided to us in the starter content with all of its options for intensity and color of the light and everything else, and inherit that into our blueprint to add to our functionality. So I'm going to choose my blueprint folder and hit select. Okay, that'll open that up for us. So I want to go over to event graph. Get rid of these. I'm going to go to class settings and we're going to add our BPI interface for the jump scare. That way we can have our jump scare event. I'm going to double click that and bring that out. Much like our door, we don't want everything to start instantly. So let's add a delay. Let's make this, I don't know, 0.7. Let's try that. And from here, let's add a timeline. I'm going to call this flicker intensity. I'm going to come over and I'm going to click on point light. One thing to remember, since this light has already been set up for us, I'm going to come over to the intensity value and I'm going to take a look at that. And it looks like this one is already set to 1700. And I'm going to remember that for when we go into flicker intensity. I'm going to add a float track. I'm just going to call it light for right now. So to add some realism to our light flicker, we do want some kind of random times and random values. Now, I did play with this prior to recording the video, and I will put all of these values in the description. But for the length of this timeline, I'm going to make this about 0.4 seconds long. I'm going to add several nodes in here. If you want to follow along, great. Or like I said, I will have all of these in the description below. I think for our first one, I want to bring this down to about half. I'm going to go find that node. I'm going to right click. I'm going to add another key. So I'm going to make 0.1. And let's make it twice the intensity. So 3400 for the value. I'm going to scroll out again so I can see these points. So beyond the second point, I'm going to right click, add another key. Let's do 0.15 this time. And let's maybe make it a third. So somewhere around 510. Another key at 0.25 for a time. And let's go maybe 1.5 intensity. It's 2550 for the value. Scroll out a little more. I'm going to add 2 more keys. This one I want to be at 0.3. And I want this value, let's do something low, like 170. Nice and dark. And then on our last key at 0.4, which is the same length that we set our overall timeline to, let's put this back to 1700 on the value. Unlike the timeline we created for the door, where I went from 0 to 1 and I allowed the lerp node to interpolate the movement, this one I'm allowing the timeline to control the values of the object. So just a couple different ways to use a timeline. One way is not necessarily better than the other. It's down to preference, really. So I'm going to highlight all of these. I'm going to hit these 2 buttons so I can make everything just kind of on the screen and take a look. So we've got some good movement in there, kind of up, down. So I'm going to save that again. Come back to the event graph. So what I want to do is I want to go over on the left-hand side. I want to grab the point light and drag that out. And then we want to set the intensity of this light from the update node. And the value of the intensity is going to be the value from our light timeline here. I'm then going to copy the point light reference and the set intensity. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add a just in case node if the timeline gets interrupted or anything. But when it is done, I want to set the intensity of the light back to its original value, which you can click on point light and see under intensity, which was 1700. That way, just in case this skips or gets interrupted, the light will come back to normal. So let's compile and save. Let's go to our map. Let's click on our trigger. Let's come over to items to activate. Let's hit the plus and add another item to that array. Hit the eyedropper. And we're going to pick our BP flicker light here. File, save all. Let's test. Okay, that was kind of quick. Let's test it one more time. Let's look at the light this time. All right, excellent. So our light is now flickering along with the jump scare. And you can play with those values. We can make the room darker if we wanted to. Let's try that. Just going to move these down a little bit. Move that over. Let's test one more time. There we go. Okay. You can make that light flicker longer. You can swing the intensity values higher and lower as you wish, whatever fits the particular type of mood you're trying to set. So now, as a bonus, let's do one more item. So I went out and found this door slam sound because I didn't like that the door was left open after the jump scare. So at the end of this, I want to slam the door. So go ahead and download this and add it to your sound folder. I'm going to go back over to BP door. I'm going to add one more custom event. And we're going to call this slam door. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to get a reference to the door and drag that out. I'm going to hold down control. So we do a get and do a set relative rotation. So before, when we opened the door, we did a lerp and slowly and naturally open the door. This time we want to snap it shut. So I'm going to right click, split this pin structure, but I'm going to go ahead and leave everything at 0. You don't have to split your pin structure. It's just a personal preference of mine so I can see them individually. That way, when I'm comparing my code, it matches what I had earlier. Purely personal preference. So from here, let's play another sound, which we should know how to do by now. So play sound 2D. And then let's add our slam sound effect. Then let's come up to our main branch of logic for event jump scare. After the screen jump scare, let's come out here and let's say slam door. Quick tip to line up your nodes. You can highlight several of them and hit Q, and it will do its best to line them up according to the execution pins. All right, so let's compile and save. Let's test this again.
Please hang up or hold for operator assistance.
Okay, let's compile and save and test our game. So I'm going to come back here to our map and hit play. Go through our trigger. Light, we have our door. Okay. I think our door slam occurred just a little too quickly. So let's go adjust that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the door slam from there. I'm going to come down to the screen jump scare line of code. I'm going to come off of here. I'm going to add a delay. We're going to leave that at, say, 0.2. And then I want to slam the door. That way I know these nodes are occurring in this exact order in these times. So one change I did make off screen is with our door open, I felt like it was moving a little quickly and I didn't realize OBS wasn't recording anymore, so I do apologize. So I want to open the open door timeline. I did make this from half a second up to 1 second, and the two nodes are once again 0, 0. And now the second node is 1 and 1. So I'm going to save that. And I feel that gives the door just a little bit smoother opening, a little scarier. So let's come in and test again. Check our door slam this time. Much better. Well, there you go, crew. That's our simple setup for adding a jump scare to your horror game. I thank you for stopping by. If you want to learn more about Blueprint interfaces, check out these couple other videos I will link for you. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about this or some ways that you might be able to improve it. Until then, I look forward to making games with you.